Right then, Night Lord Armour. So, in order to do this, I am doing a very simple set of colour schemes, as I always do. Starting over here with a Mechanicus Standard undercoat spray. Moving up to Volpus Contrast, in particular, making it very watered down. Adding Darkness, using Leviathan Blue. Xeris Layer for highlights and dry brushing, and then finally Lead Belcher for chipping. And when it's done, this is what we should end up with, a Night Lord's colour that, you know, in a lot of ways is more purple than blue, but I wanted to really give the feeling of a kind of stormy night. So let's get myself up and running here. So save myself quite a bit of hassle by, you know, getting each stage done individually. Now I've just got my fidget popper over here where I'm going to mix my wash. So just going to pop some Volpus Pink. Going to get a 50% mix of water in here. And then I'll just show you its consistency when it's all mixed up. You can see it's very runny. And then I'm going to start from top of the model and pretty much heading downwards. If you find your paint's too runny, just add a few extra drops of the Volpus Pink. Remember, the idea is to get this into the recesses more than anything. Now, if you want to make sure that you get it into the underside of this backpack, then again, it's best to stroke upwards rather than downwards on some parts. Now, it's actually a weird thing because I'm obviously doing that Leviathan as the darkest colour that's going on the miniature, and you may feel, well, it probably might work better if I did that as the first coat. However, in previous test runs while I've been doing this, because Night Lords are such a dark colour scheme, it's actually seems to work better, or I feel it works better, if your shadows, strangely enough, are lighter than the armour. And that's how I've found it works rather well. Plus, the Leviathan shows up well against the Volpus Pink, but when you do it the other way around, the Volpus Pink does not really show properly against the Leviathan. Now, I am trying to make sure that it's got a good coat of this over it. And make sure I get into all of these little recesses, all of these hidden areas. Okay, there's no part of this, by the way, that I don't want in that pinkish colour. Now, as anyone who's seen me do these kind of videos before knows, unfortunately, that is a few hours worth of waiting, and I've saved myself a bit of hassle. Rather than wait for it to dry, I've just got my next stage ready. So, Leviathan Blue. Very simple. Just, again, not going to overdo it. But I find that if you do this right, at first when it goes on, it'll give you the impression that you're completely covering up that purple. I mean, genuinely, you'll be thinking to yourself, I'm losing it. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to stay away from any of the recesses. So things like down the sides there. And that way I get to keep those purple shadows. I'm also trying my best to not push my brush down too hard, because where you've got like little, I suppose, like panels, I want the purple to still be showing past those panels. So a lot of what I'm doing here is trying to be very gentle with my brush strokes, trying to stay away from basically stopping the paint washing into the recesses of any panels as I go. Just don't get me wrong, it's not easy. It's a bit of a slower process. And one of my original aims on this, I was seriously considering doing just dry brushing Night Lord onto it, but I tried that again on a test run a while back. Wasn't really happy with it, so I went to this approach instead. Now you can see if it looks still quite streaky after the first one, don't worry about kind of letting that dry, and then anywhere that it feels like it's not covered properly, then just do a second coat. But each time just make sure your coats are not too thick as you put them on. Otherwise that purple's just not going to show through. You can see it's starting to dry, but I really do want to make sure that it's had a chance to dry fully. Trying to make sure I don't get the blue on the, like, what's it called now? The kind of seals, that's the one, the kind of flexible joints. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's right. Just trying to remember where I did all of my blue here, really. It's about getting into all of the key places, making it look right. Again, the helmet, I want to not lose all of that purple effect. brush is starting to give up. It needs to wash in a second so it stops fraying like it is doing. Really important with this as well, make sure you finish coating the whole model from the off. I tend to find that if I sort of leave it even for too long, it just doesn't coat evenly. So if you start painting a panel, finish a panel. Around the top, don't want to completely lose that purple, but you do need to make sure as much as possible is properly covered, because if you don't, it looks a bit odd. Now you'll see that towards where I started painting to begin with, it's started to dry now and it looks a bit streaky. So my advice is, if it looks like that and you're not happy with the consistency, go over it one more time. Right, so I will give that a second run over, but I'm going to leave it for now so I can move on to the next phase. So this is one that's had 2 coats. Helps if camera zooms in where it's supposed to. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this. And this is where I'm going to start doing a little combination of dry brushing and highlighting. So I've got a bit of a worn out basing brush here. I'm just going to put paint onto this now. Even though I'm going to dry brush in a second, just going to wipe the excess off onto a wet palette for later, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that wet palette for my highlighting phase. But for now, nice bit of a dry brush going on. I'm just going to dry brush the parts what you might call highest. Good idea why it's good to actually use your wet palette as well, even when you're dry brushing. That way you're not wasting too much paint, wiping it all off, you're letting it get into the actual model. Just gonna think about where we might see the light shining. Right, and then I'll also be doing just a little light highlighting using the same colour. Just go get some off my wet palette first so I'm not wasting any. Just accenting little places. It's just to add a little bit more accent. Again, it depends how much highlight, like how strong you want your highlights. If you're like me, you don't go over the top with these kind of highlights and you stick to just simple ones. But I know, you know, sometimes people do like very strong highlighting, literally every single edge. Just get this last little bit done. And then I can move on to a nice little bit. Trying to get some final edges done. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, there we go. Now, final phase is basically chipping and picking out any points in Leadbelcher. So with this, some of these areas like this one here, this is just straight up metal. I'll probably wash over that later on, that in a black ink, but what I'm going to show you now is think about where the wear and tear is going to come along on this model. You know, if you really want to go for some serious wear out, then go for it. There we go. And I'm just trying to basically go for whatever feels good, really. You can do a little, you can do a lot. It's entirely up to you. Just think about where they're most likely to scratch something. And then these little rivets, which I'm not going to finish entirely on this video, because just to be quite honest, that'll take forever. Think about anything else you need to do, like these little bits, these pipes. Again, I'll finish up all these little touches later, because I've still got to do the decals and things, which kind of want to potentially have looking chipped as well. Okay, I think then always something that I think to myself, I'll just do it a little bit here and a little bit there, and then I keep going on. But I'll finish the little details later on, like the rivets and things. But there we go. That is it. That's how I've ended up with that effect on my Night Lords. It's admittedly more towards a purple than a blue, but I liked the idea of it, particularly if you've ever watched a nighttime lightning storm. It can really take a purple hint when the lightning strikes, and you know, when I've got time, I'm going to do my little thunder strikes all over him, obviously, like this one. There we go then. That is how I create my rather interesting, I hope you'll find, slightly different Night Lord armour. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.